We have with us Barbara Gillis, who is going to be talking about education's future in the 21st century. Barbara Gillis is an innovative educator with years of experience working with youth, and she's very enthusiastic about what's happening in the future. When we come back, we're going to be exploring that. Welcome to Evolving Ideas. I'm Elaine Smitha. I'm so thrilled to bring to you Barbara Gillis, who's been with us before, because she's an innovative educator and she's really on the cutting edge of what's happening in the school system and going beyond that even into a global perspective. So we're going to learn a lot about this. So please join me in welcoming Barbara Gillis. Thank you, Barbara, for being here. And you've just come back from being off in Chicago and going to the World Future Society and a bunch of other things recently. Yes, so tell us about this, who you are.
I'm a teacher that has a great passion for children, and this has led me around the world. This past conference was in Texas, and it was the first international conference on children's rights and education for the 21st century. Corpus Christi just laid out the red carpet for all the innovators for children and for a better future for all children in the world. So it was very exciting to be part of that.
Yes.
And very exciting to be here to talk about that experience.
Yes.
And our experience at the World Future Society.
Yes, well, we have a lot to talk about. I don't know if we can get it all done in one show, but we're going to see what we can do about at least laying the groundwork for all of this. So what is it about education's future? You're really on the cutting edge of what's happening in education. You've been in the classroom, you've been Teacher of the Year, you've received the Teacher of the World Award, you've been a citizen activist, and you're being nominated for another Teacher of the World something or other. I don't know what it is, but you're just, you're just really out there on the cutting edge, and I don't know that I've ever known an educator with quite the background that you've got, Barbara. But tell me about what's been going on. What is the forecast for the future, and what are the problems that we've been experiencing that we need to be looking at?
I think the biggest problem that we're experiencing presently is that, at least in America, we are still designing education around the Newtonian physics, the Newtonian way of thinking. So that
which is
the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution and the Industrial Society became very mechanistic. Newtonian thinking is about seeing everything as separate. And when we see everything as mechanistic, then we line everyone up in rows in our classrooms, and we give everybody the same book and the same test. And we don't really have time to look at the uniqueness of the whole child.
Mm-hmm. So there's no differentiation between the qualities of one student and another. That's not happening in that.
Well, many schools are beginning to move in that direction.
It's time.
And we have leaders in school districts that are the examples and the models for that. And we have teachers likewise, but we also have many that are not. So this needs to be a national movement to move from mechanistic Newtonian thinking to whole systems design.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I mean, we have to get out of this mindset that everybody is the same and they all grew up the same and all have the same models of behavior and lifestyle and so forth, and you have unique situations in every individual. I think we're coming to that understanding more and more.
We are. That's what's so exciting, is that each year I see great growth. And this year, as I met with 4 different conferences, I realized we have made the quantum leap. We are really beginning to come together in a cooperative rather than a competitive way.
Yes, that's true.
Worldwide.
Yes.
And look for solutions.
Yes. Well, it's time. It's really time. And I think creating a new model is, I think there's been such a movement of we have to change the way we've been doing things. I think the awareness among the public is we can't keep going the way we've always gone because we're still going to get to where we've always gotten. And we've made no progress. And we have too many kids who are not making it through school with the adequate skills that they need to function in the world at their peak performance. And we've done quite a few shows on this, learning how to read right, which is wonderful. With Dee Tadlock, we've done that show, and other educators. And it's time that we understand that we have to collaborate here and consider the uniqueness of each individual, and yet work together for the good of the whole.
And we really need to move to what's being called organic education. And organic simply means education is alive and changing. And we need to be willing to adapt and change every day to meet the needs of our students and also to meet the needs of the world, because the world is changing every day.
Yeah, I think more so we've experienced that in the last few years. That's been such a shock to us, really. Things are not the same as they were when you and I were kids growing up.
And the concept of fatalism went with the Newtonian science, that we really didn't have much control. We just had to accept how things happened to us and make the best of it. Now, with people like Bruce Lipton and Michael Gurian and Joseph Chilton Pierce and all the new brain and neuroscientists, we're realizing that we can choose the world we want and create the world together that works for all.
I think we feel that power that we have. We recognize that we have the power now. I don't think we felt that we had the power before. I think it was more the victim and everybody's out there, they're running it, but we're just sort of paddling the canoe along with it. And I think now, with all the conditions that have been happening in the world, people are so eager to participate now, to find productive, loving changes in this world, and to bring around a new consciousness of what the world can be.
And you know, that really goes along with the organic idea, because human beings are evolutionary beings.
Well, absolutely, absolutely.
And we're growing too, and we're maturing. And part of the maturing that's happening is...
We need that.
is that we are moving beyond war. We're moving to a new state of consciousness.
Thank you. Yes, we really need to have that.
And we're questioning our habits and saying, are these habits working anymore? What worked yesterday or 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago may not be at all appropriate today. So we have to be ready to question.
A whole new awareness.
A whole new awareness, and really a whole new way of educating. The Socratic method is becoming very popular now, where we ask questions.
Yes, you better explain that Socratic method in case some of our viewers don't know what that means.
Well, it's about questioning rather than just having the teacher pour the answers in and expect the students to respond.
You mean dogmatically?
Yes, and seeing them as empty vessels. We're now seeing that children are born with the wisdom of the universe inside of them, and that our job as teachers is really facilitators, inspirers, to help children to question and to know and have the tools to go after looking for information on their questions.
Speaking about that, I just want to interject a story about when my first child was born, my daughter. And when they brought her to me after she was born and laid her in my arms, I looked in her eyes and I saw absolute wisdom, the pure wisdom of knowing. And I thought, wow, you know, this was so impressive on my mind, that here's this infant that was just born, but when I looked at that child, I saw so much wisdom. And it blew me away. I mean, it's been a number of years ago since she was born, but it impacted me to such a degree that I had a whole new understanding about birth and about children coming in with wisdom, and then we seem to train it out of them, or we seem to, by all the reprimands, the way we treat our children, and understanding that I don't know that people ever understand, because by the time a child is 6 years old, up until that time, they're in their subconscious mind. They're there just to learn with no judgment. And so when we punish our children, they don't understand, because there's nothing to bounce it against.
And that's another place where we're really beginning to evolve. We're beginning to understand that they simply copy everything
Exactly.
we do.
Well, but not everybody's got that message yet. I mean, we're working on it here on this show. Obviously, Evolving Ideas is dealing with evolving ideas and our concepts and belief systems and so forth. So, but I think with education, to recognize that these children have wisdom, and they're when they start to go to school, that's not just when they begin to learn.
Oh no, they've already learned ideas and habits and characteristics that will stay with them their whole life.
Exactly. And so I think we need to have a broader understanding about that with parents, young parents, when they're raising their children, that they are really dealing with very wise creatures that have come through to us to bless us and to work with them. I think there's a whole consciousness shift that can happen there.
I do too. And it's not only going to take education as we know it, but it's going to take the media to be also educators. And it will take the internet and the way that is evolving. It will soon be able to answer our questions, and we will be able to engage. In fact, now we can do that with so much of the new technology. But parenting is the most important part of education for a child. And that's really a survival skill. Every animal teaches their child how to survive, and we've almost lost that. That they need not only to have food and clothing and shelter, but even more, they need to have love.
Yes.
And touching and the eye contact. And that's why breastfeeding is so important for our baby, is when we're holding that child, it's just at the right level, so that the eyes of the child are looking at the mother and bonding. And when we're feeding the baby and the father maybe wants to do it and has a bottle, the father needs to hold that baby likewise, so that they can make contact with the child and feel the body warmth. It always just hurts my heart when I see a child in their bed or their playpen and the parent put a bottle in their mouth so that they can continue doing their work. And I know families are so busy now. But if there are grandparents, if there are neighbors, if there are brothers and sisters, cousins, we really need to give our children a lot of touching and loving and holding and eye contact and talking. It's so important. And honoring, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. So we've got that settled now. We know how we're supposed to bring up our children. Now, okay, when they start to school now, Barbara, what happens there? What happens from all the school years?
The biggest thing is, of course, this central organizing principle needs to move to seeing we're organic, we're alive, we're each an individual, each unique, and then we need to teach each child to be a continuous questioner and be self-directed with their questions. They don't need to wait for anybody to tell them. They can start looking and seeking and investigating and being curious and creative, all the gifts that they're born with, and need to be in an area where they can explore. So we have schools, many of them are private schools, Montessori, the Waldorf schools, alternative schools, and some of our best public education is beginning to move in that direction.
Oh, homeschooling is doing that.
Thank you. Homeschooling is another way. Our Head Start program is just vital for children. Children that otherwise are going to just be watching television all day. They need to be interacting and talking and listening and moving and singing and dancing and exploring.
Experiencing who they are and in an environment that they're learning about. I think it's very exciting.
I do too.
It's very exciting. So what do you see happening like in the 21st century? We're already in the 21st century here.
I see that school will begin to interact much more with technology. In India now, Wi-Fi, which is an internet access that can be used by all people, and in some communities like Philadelphia now, you can use it freely. And if wonderful educational programs are put on the internet for children, for adults, they can all use it freely. And in our countries like India, where people are so hungry, so really desirous of learning every day and learning as fast as they can be watching the internet while they're riding the bus, while they're walking. They don't have to wait for a school.
All right, now Barbara, I think I can see the potential of all this, and yet, what about the social interaction? Because we learn from one another, and isolated in front of a computer screen, you're not interchanging with and interacting with your fellow students, and you're not having that one-on-one relationship with them when you're stuck in front of the computer.
Absolutely,
model.
I couldn't agree more.
I think there has to be some kind of balance here. Yes, I think there's tools that are useful, the computer and the programs, beneficial programs, without any advertising for Coca-Cola or whatever. No advertising on any of these educational things. That I could not understand that when that started, and I don't quite understand it. Why? But there needs to be the availability for the students to interact with one another and exchange ideas among themselves.
Absolutely. I wouldn't disagree for a minute. And in America, we have always had that possibility with public education, but many countries have never had enough schools for all their children. So they're looking for any alternative. And this provides one alternative. Now, they have a lot of interaction in their communities, in their homes where they have larger families, riding the bus. I mean, if you spend time in India, you see all the people everywhere.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
So it's very different from America, where we have put children in classrooms where they've sort of missed interacting with the outer, larger world and community.
Yes.
So this
and
is
interacting
the
with
uniqueness.
nature. I want to also put that in there, interact with nature, because in schools that are taking science out of the schools, I don't know. I have a hard time with this, Barbara. I really do. I have a really hard time
I have
with
a
this.
very hard time with it too. That is really, that is what led me to take time out from my teaching of over 25 years in public education and write the book, Nurturing Civilization Builders.
That's a great book, too.
And it's also what has led me to now become a global teacher. And I'm willing to be wherever people are interested and open and want to learn and want to dialogue. So that is taking me around the world. And this conference that I went to in Corpus Christi, they brought the best and the brightest to talk with all the people that came, which included students right from Texas A&M, the community members from Texas A&M, and they brought the astronaut from Russia who has walked in space more than any other astronaut. They brought the woman that has done deep sea diving and done all kinds of video programming for National Geographic.
Wow, that was
so
impressive.
they had a large group of very talented people sharing. We also had a professor from the French Academy of Sciences in France, and he is managing 9 countries and interacting with the best possible science to be teaching young people.
Wow.
So
that's impressive.
It's very impressive.
I mean, it's encouraging. You know, it really is encouraging to know. And this was the first year for the conference.
This was the first year for this
conference.
So
I think this is another indication that that the awareness has heightened, and that they're figuring that if something's going to happen, they have to do it. Somebody has to take charge and do it. You have to be innovative and bite the bullet and go out and do it. That's not a good phrase. I don't think I like that one anymore. That's got to be another. I got to find another one. We have to be willing to take charge.
We have to be self-directed.
And self-directed, yes.
And we have to care about our community.
Right.
So it's not only being inner-directed, but it's also being outer-directed. And when we talk about civilization building, people often ask, well, what does that mean? And one way I talk about that is it's developing the compassionate genius within, while co-creating a world that works for all. And
that's very well said, Barbara. Is that your byline?
Well, you know, teaching children of all ages around the world has taught me so much. I'm the one that really was the learner. And I got to start in outdoor school in Turkey, and then with 6th graders in Africa in a village with no electricity and no running water, and they taught me about wholeness. And wholeness is what we want for every child, that their mind, body, emotions, and spirit are all engaged in evolution, in growing and becoming. And we've really tended to move away from the spirit within, or what many call the source within, because in America we have rightly separated religion from science. But the interesting thing is that it's a whole new discussion now.
Yes, it is.
With the quantum sciences, quantum physics, quantum mechanics,
Yes.
and the noetic sciences. Edgar Mitchell, who was one of the American astronauts, one of the first ones to walk on the moon, coming back, he saw this beautiful, beautiful
Yes.
blue Earth.
Yes, the Earth.
And his whole body was just flooded with emotion.
Changed everything.
And he goes, my goodness, I know everything about science and about the outer world, but I know little about what's happening to me right now as I feel so just full of love and beauty and knowing as I look at Earth.
Yes.
So he started the noetic sciences, and it's growing. It's
It
become an
has.
international
It's wonderful.
organization now.
There's these people who have visions, visionary perspectives, who are starting new and innovative things, and that's what we need to shift where we've been. We need a whole new vision for the future.
But do you know, every single child, every single baby is born creative.
Yes.
And creative is another word that I interchange with innovation. So what we need to do in public education in the 21st century, along with having a central organizing principle of that we're all part of a living whole system, and we want to develop the wholeness in every single child and their uniqueness and bring forth their gifts. We want to see that they learn the skills to have compassionate communications, to have the skills for understanding. And now I lost where we were just a minute ago. I was going to answer that. I was going to respond to that.
Well, yes, I was asking about where we're going in the future, but when you talk about compassionate learning, that needs to be in the home. The home needs to start with compassion, and the parents and the relationship with their child. And instead of beating them up and all that, you have to have compassion and love for them.
Well, you know, that's another place that we are evolving as human beings.
Yes, it has to happen.
Because look at our schools. I remember I was teaching near Watts in Los Angeles in 1986 when they banned using the paddle or the stick or hitting a child.
That time.
And the teacher next to me said, oh my gosh, I don't know how to teach without doing this. I guess I'll just threaten the children that I have the stick, I have the paddle, and I won't say anything, that of course I'm not allowed to use it. But just since that time, no one even thinks like that anymore in our schools. And as we educate and we model this for parents, parents need to know that isn't an alternative anymore. Anytime we use violence with our children, they learn violence. And violence is something that has overtaken our culture presently.
It has. I don't think that there was ever a thought because my parents my dad once in a while would give me a spanking, and I don't think I'm ever the worse for it. And it taught me to mind my business, for sure. But I don't think that parents really thought about that being violence. I don't.
We didn't have the research. We didn't have the information.
Yeah, it wasn't even a thought in their mind. It was just a reprimand and a way to punish the child so they would behave. And I've thought about that for a long time. I thought, what does that mean to behave? What does that mean? Because we're always behaving. It's our behavior. We're always behaving.
But go ahead.
And I've really been thinking a lot about that, about the phraseology, the things that we've learned, how we've talked to our children, and how we validate what our actions were in relationship to our children and raising. and just taking another look at that, because I never looked at that before.
Because those are habits,
Yes, they
patterns that are passed on
absolutely.
generation after generation.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So another part of that habit pattern that is now coming to consciousness, and people are beginning to break the chains that hold us by waking up, is to see us all as partners, even our children, even our teachers, our doctors, rather than looking up and idolizing the doctor or the minister or the priest or the teacher or the president. We need to see that we're all working together, and that we have ideas to share with them, and they have ideas to share with us. And our children need to be honored. Some of our very best schools ask the children for what are their ideas, how would they like to put this together, and we need to value that, and we need to work with that so that all of them can begin to honor and cherish themselves and their talents.
Whoa, this is a big step. This is a really big step, Barbara, from what education's been. Oh my goodness, I can remember working in one of my early teaching jobs was in a parochial school, and I can remember the Mother Superior down at the end of the hall after school really laying it on one of the students there, and I thought, oh my gosh. I never had that in my education because I went to public school, but I just thought, oh my goodness, that was a little harsh.
Well, I always think of the Martin Luther King story. Do we have time for me to share that story?
Yes, yes.
This is when I was teaching a lot of indigenous students in the Mariana Islands, the island of Saipan, and this was not many years ago. And the students I had were especially Carolinian. They had come from the Caroline Islands at the time of a tsunami that wiped out their island in the early 1800s.
Wow.
And they were a fishing community, and they hadn't had a lot of formal education. But they wanted it
And not
for their
much
children
interaction with anybody else, probably, either.
that had formal education. And then, of course, because there's 52 cultures on the island,
Oh
I
my.
had
Oh my.
all a mixture of students in my class.
52. Oh my goodness.
52 on a very small island. But the interesting thing is, the first year I was so challenged teaching these children. They were very robust. They were very loud in the way they approached problems and situations. And it was very hot in our classroom, no aircon. And I thought, whoa, do I want to do this again next year? I thought, well, I've gotten through the 5th grade, and I had 25 students, and I thought, well, I know the curriculum now. They promised me an air conditioner the next year, so I decided to stay. But little did I know, they wanted me to be their 6th grade teacher. And the parents had all come and talked to the principal and said they wanted their children to have me again in the 6th grade.
Really, what an honor.
It was an honor, but I was scared to death. And I felt I'd had a rough year, but one of the great things that we did was we put on the play of Martin Luther King. This was their choice. I had several plays. They had never done a play before. They were familiar with that name, and that's partly probably why they chose it. And they practiced until they knew all the lines perfectly. They performed for our school, then they performed for our village, and then they performed for the whole island.
Oh my goodness.
And the end of the year came, and I didn't think much about it, but I had never taught 2 years in a row, and I think this will be something else that happens more in the future, that there will be some educators that their role is to stay with the same children through elementary level, so that there's some continuous pattern. Maybe the teachers that teach different subjects will change, but they will have one steady person that works with them and their family.
I think they do that in the Waldorf schools.
They do. And we're looking at all these models, and schools are beginning to copy some of these models. We're looking at what's happened in the highly gifted and talented programs and realizing all children can do those programs. All children are gifted and talented.
That's true. I think Rudolf Steiner really was so progressive in his ideas and about education and instituting it in the Waldorf schools to demonstrate that it works. Because the students come out of there, they're pretty well educated.
but they spend a lot of time educating parents too.
Yes.
And that's something that needs to become much more a part of our public education.
Well, you know, take a look at this, Barbara. I think there's a good reason for that because the parents had a different kind of an education.
That's true.
And to bring them in, it's like re-educating, and we never stop learning. So when the parents become a part of this and are cooperating for the good of the school and for the student, their own child, then I think that they feel like they're making a greater contribution to the future.
Absolutely. And there are public schools now that are called alternative schools or environmental schools or language schools, and parents that choose to be in those schools are also choosing to give so many hours or so many projects,
donating some time
every single month. And I think that's so vital. But another piece of that is there are a lot of parents that just can't do that because of their work environment. And Dick Spady, who has Dick's Drive-In.
Yes, Dick's been a guest on my show here.
Has he? And he's in Seattle. And one of the things that he feels is vitally important is all of his employees not only have money for college, which he provides insurance, but they all are given 1 hour each week to go out and volunteer in the schools or in some type of service to their community.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And I would love to see every business
I was not aware of that. That is fantastic.
pay their employees time off to go and be of service in our public schools. The biggest problem in our public schools is that no one human being, especially at the elementary level, can be teaching 25 children. That is an impossible situation unless you're going to just treat them all like they're exactly the same and give them all the same book, all the same reading assignment, all the same math assignment.
Yeah, we used to have a lot more students in my classes when I was growing up.
I know. And people tell me from the Philippines, oh my goodness, we have 50 children in our class. But we know now that there need to be 2 teachers or 2 adults in every classroom. And we need to have no more than 18 students. So we got a lot of work to do there.
Wow. Well, that means there's a lot of people who are educators and they're going to get re-involved.
Yes, it does. And it also means that people that work in any business can come in and help children just by giving them their love and their touch and their attention that can make a difference.
I think this is a good place to interject one of the things that I've been interested in, and that is bringing some of the seniors who are no longer working into the schools. I've already talked to somebody in the education department about that because it just seems to me that it's such a waste of their wisdom that is not being, there needs to be a collaboration between the elders and the children in the schools. Some of them don't have their grandparents nearby, and I do think that they would help to stabilize the community if they were there. Having that adult wisdom and compassion for the students and caring, I think would go a long way toward enriching the school situation in the first place and enriching the lives of the students.
And making
theirs
the
too.
elders
And
feel
making the elders
like
feel
they
like-
have purpose in life.
Exactly, and filling them too, because some of them are living in solitary confinement, sort of, in apartments and in buildings where I've been in some of these, and
They're very isolated.
they're isolated, and there's no camaraderie, and they just go into their little apartment and they close the door and they sit in front of the television. This is a terrible waste of humanity, terrible waste. And I'm championing this. I wrote about it in my book too. Getting them involved in the education to build the community.
Absolutely.
And to share their wisdom and to learn from the children too. So I think it's a good collaboration. So I'm very much in favor of that.
And that's beginning to happen worldwide. Many societies have always had that collaboration. They've never lost the community of the family.
Right.
But they've had many children in the family.
Right.
The grandparents lived right there. We're now looking at alternative ways to create the same environment. And at the World Future Society this summer, which includes people from all over the world, this was a major topic. Education was a major topic, and how we can collaborate with all ages. So we're intergenerational, we're international, having people from all different countries and backgrounds.
Cultural mix.
Yes, thank you. How that can happen. And one of the things that we need to see is how, again, we talked about how we copy what we see.
Of course, we're mimics.
And
We don't need a copy machine. All we do is look at something and Zingle, we've got it.
And then we repeat,
Yes.
rather than allowing the creativity and the innovation in ourselves to find a whole new way. And this was what was so fascinating about the Martin Luther King story in the Mariana Islands, is when those children became 6th graders, and I had them in my classroom, I was shocked. I did not know what kind of children I would be teaching in the 6th grade. And what I found out is those children had become little Martin Luther Kings.
Oh, really?
And all of 6th grade, it was totally a self-directed classroom. Little Martin Luther Kings were creating, helping one another, working to make the whole school a better place. And they had the vision. So just think if we have had a diet of violence on our media. What are our children's minds thinking versus if they'd had a diet of all the great people, all the great projects happening in the world?
What I hear you saying, Barbara, is that they were focusing on empowerment.
Yes.
Empowering the students.
Yes.
And only with empowering the students that's where you're going to find the growth occur. You cannot reprimand and belittle students in the classroom and expect them to perform at their peak. It's just not going to happen.
And the most important thing that they need is love.
That's true.
And I know Bruce Lipton has been on your show many times.
Yeah, about a dozen times.
And he stresses over and over again through the scientific method how fear closes down our brain, and we go to the hind reptilian brain.
That's right.
And go to fight or flight. And love and compassion lead us to the prefrontal cortex, which then opens up and allows us to be creative, innovative, curious, questioning.
Right. Well, I talk about that in my book, too.
We all do.
Plug.
But we don't yet have it in our schools in
No.
a way that is global, even in a way that is happening for all children.
Well, I don't think you're going to get everyone at one time. It's going to be a gradual process, and the fact that it has begun is tremendous. It's a humongous, I like that word, move, because at least the momentum is beginning.
Absolutely, and this is what I'm seeing. This is what's so exciting.
Well, I've had some neat experiences this summer as well with some conferences, but I'm sorry I wasn't able to be with you at these others as planned. But I think that together with the things that we have learned, we will be able to have an impact and to help people to realize that there's a lot more going on than they think.
Absolutely.
A lot.
Lots more. And if you could just get out and touch the world, you would get excited.
That's a very nice statement, Barbara. I like that one a lot. Did you just come up that on your own?
Well, of course. I'm in a loving environment, Elaine.
Absolutely. I swear, it's really wonderful. Go out and touch the world. I love that. It's very good. It's very good. Wow. So, and you talk a lot about nurturing the civilization builders in your book, but what else do you have here? You have some other things here.
Yes, I do. These are materials that are coming out of the Seattle area, and this book is called It's All Connected. And I love it. I went to one of the Seattle schools and observed their program, and what the social studies language arts program has done is they manage these high school students, but they have hired consultants to come in and help them teach the program so that students who sign up for it, and they have about 100 in the school that I observed, are able to learn the Spanish they need and then plan to be a service group that goes to South America and works there for several weeks and lives with families. And so they practice a language, they get to know a whole other way of living.
They've done some of that student,
the exchange programs?
Yeah, the student exchange, yes.
They have, and we've had that, and it's multiplying, it's mushrooming.
I'm glad to hear that it's still involved and growing. I'm kind of off of some of the news on this, so it's good that you're bringing this forward.
Well, I was just flabbergasted to be in this school in Seattle where they were introducing the book, the materials they're using. There's several other books. I don't have one here, but it's also solutions that students can work on for some of the problems that we're dealing with. And even though this material's Facing the Future is what it's called, and these materials, people facing the future, people and planet, there's a website here I'm looking to see so I could share it over the, it's www.facingthefuture.org. So teachers, administrators, if they wanted, they could look up these materials. But what I loved was that the teachers themselves, if they didn't feel qualified to take students to one of the countries in South America, they could hire somebody within the program. This school had a grant.
Oh, my.
And bring in consultants who are prepared to do that piece of it.
So where did the grant money come from?
Yeah, I wish I could tell you, but I do know there's a lot more grant money out there than ever gets used.
Really? Really?
Yes.
How interesting.
Yes. And so anytime you're doing something for a group, and especially for education, more and more grants are being made
Well, that's
available.
good. Maybe we have some people in our audience who want to take advantage of that.
And we may have people in the audience also that want to sponsor a program like this.
That's a good idea.
And give funding for it, for a school in their neighborhood, in their community. So I brought those materials because I just fell in love with them when I was able to go to this workshop that the Seattle schools put on. Now, the other things I want to share are from the World Future Society, and they are now celebrating their 50th year. And this happens every year in a different city. So I was able to go 2 years ago to San Francisco, and I felt very encouraged that year. Then last year we went to Washington, D.C. They usually have 500, 600, 700 people attend, plus as many as 50 people from around the world. But last year in Washington, D.C., it was a little bit scary, so much on technology and so much on the war. But this year in Chicago, I felt a balance coming. People are realizing we are moving beyond war, that technology needs to be used to educate and the children around the world, and that every child has a right to education. So there was so much more using technology, not for war, but for children learning how to open their hearts and minds and work in a cooperative style around the world.
I think the world is getting very small now. We're interacting in a closer proximity, it seems. And I think that this war in Iraq has been an eye-opener for many people, that we realize we cannot continue this way. This is, the protest has been pretty high on that. And yes, there are dangers in the world, but it's because I think we've created this kind of animosity and hostility, maybe, but just not reaching out to them in the way that we really needed to.
Well, we didn't always have a way. We didn't always have the information. We didn't have the technology. Many people didn't have the money to travel. We didn't maybe have homes where we could have exchange students live in our homes. So I really look at my own life as a person that was very privileged. Maybe not financially, but it was so rich in the interactions that I had with other people. Yes, you had,
because you grew up in a university family and had a lot of foreign students that were there visiting and staying with you. And
so that's part of why I wrote the book.
Yes.
Not everybody can have this,
no,
but we can all share it.
That's right.
And you can really have the vision for your children to want to be able to be an exchange student or want to go to college. That's just so important that the parents set that groundwork early.
I get a little concerned about the cost of education, because they're saying that to get a college education it's going to get more expensive, and I think it's terribly expensive now.
It's
and
outrageous.
I'm wondering what can be done to lower the cost of education and still make it available for people to attend. I'm not sure what that would look like, but it seems when it gets to be so expensive that it takes a whole year's earnings from a family to send their child to college is a little disproportionate.
Totally. I don't disagree with you, and I think every family that's sending someone to college would agree.
And I just, I don't know, there seems to be, the universities seem to have a lot of money, and I don't know why maybe they need so much more.
The economics and the financial piece of all of this has actually, in many ways, propelled us forward and held us back.
Yes, it has. You're right.
Because universities depend on big businesses, big
They
corporations to get their money and give them grants so that their colleges and universities can flourish. And now, as we try to educate in a whole new way for a world that works for everyone,
Yes.
for seeing a cooperative style more than a competitive style, although there's a balance here, they're still dependent on these corporations who don't want these ideas taught because it doesn't support the status quo.
And it doesn't support their view for their business. And we're running into that with the pharmaceutical industry funding so many of the universities, giving them all kinds of big money.
And we're running into that with the military-industrial
I know,
complex.
it's
It's been
amazing.
a great way to bring money to culture, to a society.
So what I hear you saying, Barbara, is that our focus has been skewed,
That's true.
that our value system has been skewed, that we're not really looking to bring our students into a world of the best and the brightest and knowledgeable to function and to contribute in a really positive way, but to maintain the status quo of the money machine.
Absolutely, but I don't think these things are done on purpose. When it happens, we want everybody to get an education, and then
Right.
we want everyone to have a job.
Yes.
But as everything changes, now we have to take many more steps to make sure that the education is equal for all children, and
Yes.
it's not good enough just to have children in America. The money that we are spending for war since World War II has now met the $1 trillion mark. Just imagine what that could have meant for a world
Yes.
if we could have educated the children with it.
Yes.
So it's a huge, huge shift. But with all of us working together, and you know, the March for Peace in 2003 was the largest stand and show of empowerment of the people, I think, to ever happen in the history of the world. They had more people marching for peace than at any other time, and this was all through the internet, that every nation in the world knew this was the time to come together.
You know, the internet has done a great job on unifying.
It has.
That has been a tremendous force and will continue to be so. And so it's really doing some good things, really doing some really good things. And I'm happy to see that happening. So that looks promising, doesn't it?
You know, just today I got to meet with Paul Jay, who is president of a new group of people around the country, and Canada and India are the big areas that are becoming involved, and it's called Independent World Television. And this will eventually not be funded by the big corporations. The money won't come from government, but it will be independent media worldwide.
We need that. We need an independent view, don't we?
And they're planning to start 2007.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So
right
again,
around the corner.
that's something that we all need to watch for, and those extra pennies that we're looking where we can donate it. In the last month, they have raised thousands of dollars by people just giving their last $500, their last $50, or some people are pledging to give some every month. That's something I want to do too. I believe so much in the program. So things are changing. Things are happening.
Well, that's excellent. That's excellent. So, so what is this Futurist Club? What is that?
You know, this is called Starting a Futurist Club.
So what is
Time
that all about?
Trackers. This is a program for high schools that is founded by the World Future Society, and Christy Duggar in Eureka, California, is a great science fiction reader. She has been following the World Future Society for the last 30 years.
My.
She has raised her own 2 children and many children that just needed a home. And she's also a landscape architect, so she could be doing many things, but she wants this to be a program that children around the world can be learning about space.
Oh, how interesting.
So Time Trackers is really joining a club and they call them the geeks because it's the geeks, they say, that are interested in the space communities and what it's going to be like in space when we do have communities. And they're talking about it now. Now that our discovery has been successful and we can go to the moon and use that as a place.
To the moon or Mars?
Well, we can go to Mars, but they're talking about we need the moon so that we can set up sites as a transition to then go further and go to Mars.
So we'll all be moving to the moon?
I think that there will be communities by 2025 in Mars.
At the rate that we're going with our planet here, we're destroying it at a very fast rate, so we're going to have to escape someplace else.
Well, I would like to think that we heal the planet.
I would like
before
to think
we
so
ever
too.
go out
Thank
into
you.
space and take
Thank
any
you.
bad habits from
Thank
here.
you, thank you. Well,
And
we need to change those habits like right now.
But let me just read for you the how. She has done it who, what, how. And the how is, how do you like the idea of a futurist club for your high school students? The interest and responsiveness of those in the futurist community will be the determining factor for an organization's success. So if you're a person out there listening to this program and you would like...
Student in the high school?
Yes. This is high school.
And college?
Yes. And it just needs leadership. It needs parents who are willing to give 3 or 4 hours a month to these young people to develop this club. And there's already a plan. It's already on the internet.
I love
and
it.
they can get it through going to the World Future Society.
So do we have the website for that?
The website is www.worldfuturesociety, which is just the letters WFS.
Okay, but not for this club?
For the club specifically,
That's what I mean for the club.
It's through the World Future Society, so I'm not seeing...
So they could go there and there would be a click-through,
there would be
perhaps.
a click-through to how to get to this.
Okay.
I'm not seeing directly a website.
Okay.
Okay, let's see. You can contact Christy Duggar, and she is the organizer, and she could certainly give you all the information you need, and that's Duggar, D-U-G-G-E-R, 1893 at yahoo.com.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
And then there's a technical advisors, and that is futurelearning2 at yahoo.com. Or if these are all way too many websites and links, you could go to my website, which is civilizationbuilders.com, and go to links, and it gives all these links.
Or they could go to the World Future Society and there would be a link there.
Absolutely.
So that would be good. Wow. Well, this is very informative. My goodness. Well, we just have a few minutes left, Barbara.
Okay.
So how do we want to wind this, pull this all together then?
Well, I would like to focus on purpose.
Okay.
One of the things that came up is that young people in America are often lacking purpose. And they look at the world in front of them, and it either scares them and they say, well, I can't do anything about it. That's the fatalistic point of view, that they can't change anything. What can they do? So for many of them, that leads them into drugs and alcohol and abuse of themselves.
I can see that, or because they need to have some kind of a purpose for living, and they don't have any, and so therefore they bow out.
And our mechanistic society
Yes,
and our
yes.
mechanistic materialistic focus, people get tired of chasing the almighty buck, and some people...
That's true.
Some people cop out before they even get started on the journey. They don't see how they can do it. They can't get into a trade school or into college.
Yes.
And so a fast and easy way is trading in drugs, or other ways that young people are doing, which is in very violent ways.
Yes.
So as we transition to whole systems thinking, all of a sudden it gives all of our youth purpose. And I don't think there's any other gift that we could give to them that could be so important. Once you have purpose, then you are willing, you're excited to look, what are my gifts? What can I do to make this a better world?
I think what you just said, what are my gifts? And I think that's something that the schools could really help the students with.
Absolutely.
Is to learning what their gifts are and honoring those.
Absolutely.
I can't tell you, I mean, even though I was doing communication at a very early age, going and talking to the neighbors and playing the piano for all the neighbors, I mean, I was really outgoing, but it wasn't really brought into my understanding that I was a communicator and that was the way I was. And I mean, if I had known all that stuff earlier, my whole life would have been different. So I didn't really recognize what my skills were, you know.
And how many people do we know like that?
I don't know.
Many, many, many. They don't really see what is their best talent and how to connect that with purpose to make the world better.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.
And thank you very much to my audience, and thank you for tuning in, and join me next time when we explore yet another avenue of our universe and our relationship to it. I'm Elaine Smitha.